So welcome everybody. My name is Angelika Frey-Oldenburg from the German Development Organization, and I'm heading the global program on culture and creative industries. And this project has the aim, and I see some of our partners also in the room. I think you know the project already very well. But for all who are new, our project aims to promote employment and income perspectives for the creatives. And currently, we are active in 6 partner countries within the MENA region and in the Sub-Sahara Africa. And in our program, we implement together with the German Goethe-Institut. But for this initiative today, we also would like to highlight that together with the World Bank's Solution for Youth Employment Program, and Jamie is here as a representative, we have recently joined forces to initiate a Creative Economy Alliance. So the aim of this alliance is to build partnerships, share knowledge, collaborate on important and future topics in order to promote employment for creatives. And what brought the World Bank as Solution for Youth Employment Program and us together is our common interest to increase employment perspectives, especially for youth. And we see here a lot of potential in the creative sector, especially when it comes to digital creative topics. And referring to that and to our intention to share knowledge, we are starting today with a learning journey. We deep into the Web3 world, and we will learn and understand from Bridget Greenwood why Web3 technology is important for the creative economy. So we are really interested in listening to you, Bridget, and hearing more about this important Web3 technology. Today's event is also part of a wider approach. Further webinars will follow on how creative policy can be oriented towards Web3 technology. And we also will follow up on the situation of women in Web3 technologies. We hope that after this first webinar rounds, you feel well informed about the status quo of this exciting emerging market, that you have gained insights and connections to interesting stakeholders in the field. And what would be amazing coming out from this series, webinar series, is that at the end you will be inspired to get connected, to explore potential future collaboration fields. So I will now hand over, as Kira already mentioned, to my team members, Heike and Kira, who will guide you now through the next steps. And we are really excited, Bridget, to hear more about your input and the new dimension Web3 technology. Thank you, and engage with us on this really interesting learning journey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Angelika. I am Kira Schmieg. I contribute to the German Development Cooperation, especially for the initiative on Web3 within the program Angelika presented. And I like to introduce our today's speaker, Bridget Greenwood. She is an accomplished and dynamic leader in the field of Web3. She is the founder of the Bigger Pie, an organization that supports exceptional women in financial tech and Web3. And she is co-founder of the 200 Billion Club, which aims to combat the lack of funding for female and underrepresented founders. She's been working in Web3 industry since 2017 and is an advisor for a number of Web3 startups. In 45 minutes, she will guide us through what Web3 is, how it plays into creators' economy, and what this means for the creative industry from a bird's eye view. As Angelika mentioned, this is the kickoff of our webinar series as well, deep dive into Web3 in cooperation with the World Bank's program Solution for Youth Employment. The leading question is how Web3 can be supportive as such, especially in emerging countries and the global south. We have 45 minutes of input, starting with the fundamentals of Web3 and creators economy, continuing with the different industry branches, and in conclusion, giving a recommendation for the legal landscape. And said that, I can encourage everyone who has a question to feel free posting them in the chat. And with these words, I like to welcome Bridget Greenwood.
Thank you so very much, Kira, and thank you both, everyone for inviting me and coming. I'm just going to share my screen with you. So first of all, I'm going to make sure that technically we have things set up. Is this in presenting mode, Kira? Can you see it as a large screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'll tell you a little bit more about me, and then we'll walk you through the creative economy and the importance of Web3. What's currently happening, why it needs fixing, and what the future can look like. It's incredibly important to understand as well the contribution that women have in the success of youth employment. So I came into the space, as Kira said, back in 2017. I used to be a financial advisor. I was very, very keen on understanding more about the 2008 man-made economic crisis. I adore the film The Big Short and have watched it many times, because if you haven't seen it, it's a fantastic film that walks us through, a very good Hollywood film that walks us through exactly what happened. It literally was a man-made financial crisis. I was introduced to Bitcoin in 2015, 2016, and I found it intriguing that it was presented to me as a reaction to what happened in 2008, to suggest that maybe we should have more than one form of economic activity and framework, because clearly sometimes when we rely on one, it can fail. So I was very keen to understand more about this industry. It's got me into a startup in 2017. And in that time, I saw that this technology, this open blockchain technology, has the abilities to transform every sector that we do across every geography. It wasn't just in the financial sector. And that really what's most exciting and innovative about Bitcoin's technology and open public blockchains is that they are open, which means that anyone can join in, that they are public, which means that they have transparency, that they are borderless, which means it doesn't matter where we are in the world, we can still participate in this economy. They're permissionless. We don't need to have a central organization to allow us to come in or to monitor the activity that we have. And we can have more micro payments on these systems, particularly when we're looking at international payments. Now, I look at everything through a gendered lens. And one of the things that, although it's wildly different among different countries, they all have in common. And that is that women have less access to capital, finance. They're not paid as much as their male colleagues. They have to do more of the invisible and unpaid work. And as a result of that, they have to be far more flexible in how they go about managing their lives and being part of the financial economy. So having this technology actually allows us to overcome a lot of those hurdles, and hopefully we'll understand more as we go through. But that's not going to be built. The technology might be able to be used for that, but no one's going to build that unless we have everyone at the design, development, and deployment table. We don't want a new industry built by a few, for a few, as we've seen so many times. And so that's why I started the Bigger Pie, focusing on supporting the fantastic women in the space, and then recognizing how little VC funding goes into female founders. Also launched the 200 Billion Club last year. So that's to give you the framework from which why I'm excited by this technology, why I think it's transformative, and we'll see how far we've got into making improvements and how much further we have to go in terms of the future. So let's have a look at the big market, the big picture first. So the World Economic Forum, twice a year, produce a report on the future of work. Now, this is largely based on the future of work for those who are employed and by employees and what they're looking at. I also know that there are a lot more trends about what does the future of work look for. And as our youth come through, as our next generation of the workforce come through, they're not expecting to have what my father had, my parents had, which is, you go into work, you have 1 or 2 employers pretty much for your work, and then you come out at the other end. There is much less trust in the employers being able to give you long-term employment. There's much more talk about employers sacking or terminating contracts without, by email, without any sort of care for the labor force. And there's also a lot more research that shows that actually the next generation who are coming into the labor market, as it were, want to make sure that they have a much better experience, a much more alignment with the work that they're getting paid to do. And I think this is what better place to be able to do that outside of, but the creative economy. So what do the labor market trends look at? They're basically saying that we're having more of a divergence between those who are safe at work and those who are facing more employment issues and lower levels. That's been particularly highlighted by the pandemic. And no one will be surprised to hear that actually it's those with basic education, youth and women who are facing the negative side of the lower employment levels. So we need to find new systems for these fantastic women and youth to be able to contribute into their economic safety. We're seeing real wages decline as a result of ongoing cost of living. We're seeing the technology adoption impacting job creation, so we can touch on some of that. The rise of Web3, and we can't do anything without talking about generative AI. I'm only going to touch on it slightly, but I think in terms of the future of labor, it's a massive topic. The other thing that the report said was the importance of industry to look more at environmental, social, and governance standards becoming more prevalent, and we'll touch on that in terms of what Web3 and the creative economy can do in alignment. And also with the rise of the creator economy, which started sort of 10 to 15 years ago, it has meant new job opportunities, new ways of working, and new ways of earning. So let's dive into that a little bit more. The creator economy, as I said, sort of came out around 10 to 15 years ago. It first was laughed off as more being a hobbyist, but today, various valuations, but today it's now suggesting that creator economy is worth 100 billion globally, with 50 million people identifying as creatives, either working independently or with one of a constellation of startups. Is that a question for me?
Yeah, kein Problem. Okay, ciao.
Or not? Is that a question for me, or is that someone just needed to mute?
Excuse me.
No, somebody needs to mute.
Okay, no worries at all. I was going to ask for translation, otherwise that's perfect. So when we look at the creator economy, yes, it's a growing ecosystem where individuals can leverage digital platforms and technologies to create and distribute their own content and to be able to earn a living from it. What it's managed to do is we've seen a democratization of content creation. We've seen more diverse revenue streams. There have been job creations because when you think about some of the influencers that are global, you know that they have a team behind them, which can include social media management, community engagement, the recording and the creating of the content itself, photoshopping, all sorts of different skill sets and job creations that we didn't have previously. We're seeing a new way of working in terms of collaboration and partnership opportunities with large organizations and individuals. We're also seeing the rise of the gig economy and freelancing, again, supporting the creator economy, and a redistribution of power and gatekeeping, which Web3 definitely helps to unlock. So the rise of the creator economy has been transforming the labor markets by providing these new avenues for self-expression, entrepreneurship, and income generation. But let's be honest, only a handful of people are really able to make a decent living with the current systems. It was just last year that TikTok rolled out a new way for creators to earn money on its platform. They called it TikTok Pulse. And it meant that advisors could insert, advertisers could insert videos of their brand into the content of the TikTok videos. But they only selected the top 4% of videos. And you had to have a minimum of at least 100,000 followers to participate in the program in the first place. That means that only the very small minority at the top of content creators are able to really participate financially. We are seeing all the time that Web2 reward systems are skewed in favor of these big platforms. YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, they earn billions from content that they don't create and data that they don't own. And while they're making millions, according to a 2022 Linktree report, 46% of content creators made less than $1,000 a year. And this is why I'm excited that Web3 has the potential to change that. In terms of flexibility of work that you have, it also means that you have much more control of your time and your day when you might have to juggle more than one job and other needs, including education, or, as I said, a lot of the invisible care work. So Web3 has the potential to change all of this. I just want to touch on, and I know that this isn't going to be a technical presentation, but we do need to understand what it is about blockchain and its relationship with Web3 that makes this so exciting and possible. Now, Web3 was coined as a phrase back in 2014 by Gavin Wood. He is one of the co-founders of Ethereum and has gone on to found Polkadot, for any of you who are familiar with any of the protocols in the industry. He basically said it's a decentralized online ecosystem based on blockchain, which isn't very English or very, very plain speaking. So hopefully by the time we've finished, it'll make sense to you. So as I said, I was attracted to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is the grandfather of blockchain. Without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. It's an open source, which means that people were able to scrape the code, duplicate it, copy it, play around with it, learn from it, and tweak it, which is what we've seen happen as Web3 has grown. So Bitcoin managed to find the solution that said, instead of needing a bank or a central entity to say when we're saying that there's been an entry into the ledger and an entry out of the ledger, that we need that bank to be able to turn around and say, yes, that's correct for everyone. Bitcoin managed to find a way to be actually make it that everyone can keep an eye on the ledger and that they can get rewarded for that. And we can do that using technology that makes it secure and something that we can trust. And it was this ability for the technology that meant that we can be open, which means anyone can access it. Anyone with opportunity to get a Bitcoin wallet, opportunity to have access to the internet can participate. Public, so verifiable by anyone, anywhere. I know that a lot of jurisdictions have a lot of issues when it comes to having opportunities, as we said at the beginning, to be banked, to have access to financial instruments. And youth and women are the ones who are most underserved in this scenario. Borderless, so not only can you be anywhere and access these systems, but you can transact with somebody else anywhere. Neutral, which means that we're not interested in what information and what valuation is being transferred across the network. Censorship resistant, which lies along that, and trustless, which means we don't need a bank or someone else to be that person to know that actually when we're making these transactions, that they happen and that we can trust what's going on. And they're immutable, and immutable means that once it's recorded, it cannot be changed. And these are key essentials to allowing our Web3 world to be able to grow and develop. So from Bitcoin, we then saw the development of Ethereum. Ethereum was the creation of Vitalik Buterin and some others, and they said, oh, we love this idea of a distributed ledger. Can we build a distributed internet on it? And so we saw Ethereum come to life, launched in 2015. To be able to build applications on top of the Ethereum layer, we have what are called smart contracts. And that's where we saw the ability. So a smart contract, in the most simple of terms, a smart contract is, think of a vending machine. You want to buy a bottle of water from a vending machine. You tap in the code of where it is in the vending machine. You insert your tokens, whether it's putting your phone up there or if you've got some cash that you put in, and you press the button. And without a shopkeeper being involved, your bottle of water is dispensed. So we can think of smart contracts in that sort of ways, that we can remove the middleman to execute on a number of equations and transactions. Excuse me. And then from those smart contracts, a smart contract wasn't unique, it wasn't individual. There were many of them. And then we saw the ability to say, actually, we can have something that is a smart contract, that is unique. And this is where we see the birth of an NFT, which is a non-fungible token, which doesn't help you understand what an NFT is. But we'll go through and talk to you about NFTs. So with this technology and with this advancement, we're now looking at, and we're going to dive into why Web3 building for the creator economy, I believe, is going to be the future. For those of you who haven't done any reading or any studying or any dabbling into Web3, it's a real shift. It's a complete unlearning and a new shift paradigm of thinking. So where we were beforehand is, particularly when we think about those big tech companies, building in Web2 mentality is, hey, I'm the platform, I'm the company, I own your data, we get to control what's happening, we get to make money from you, we decide whether or not you can get access and we can turn you off at any time, and we don't show you what our transactions are all about. The idea and the mentality between Web3 is very different. It's like, actually, you can own your own data. You can use the blockchain technology to be able to hold it onto your own data and share it as you want to. As you share it, you can have opportunity to earn from it. As a community, you can decide that you'll come in and have some voting rights onto the shaping of the next steps, where investments are going to go, what does it look like as an organization. We're much more transparent about what goes on. And we have our transactions on a ledger, which is what we call on-chain, on the blockchain. And we're looking to be inclusive for all. Now, those are the ideals. And we'll walk through how we managed to go from ideals and to where we are today. So the Web3 is a new generation of the internet based on blockchain with the idea of shared economics, democratization of access, increased transparency. It gives us access to digital assets and Web3 applications that mean that we no longer have the closed walls and the permissioned opportunities to get into finance. Those barriers are much more reduced. We can have digital assets like NFTs, where as a content creator, we can show our ownership and put into a contract that this is ours. We can prove that it's ours as we've created it. Once we sell it, we can get some value from that. But in that smart contract that's already pre-programmed, every time someone else chooses to reuse it or resell it or have another transaction, I, as the original content creator, get a revenue share from that, which is, I think, one of the most fundamentally improvements for our artists. When you think of how many artists do we know that we learned about how they sold their art for not very much at the beginning of their journey, and their art value went up to millions throughout their living career, but they never got a share of any of that value from the original work they did. That no longer has to be the case. We're seeing social networks, unlike the big tech that we have at the moment, where you create your content, you own your content, and you can earn from it. And we're seeing marketplaces that are set up so that you have that community of people and that opportunity to be able to buy, sell, hold, show, display, learn, investigate, set up. And the Web3 skills that are being touted at the moment as being the most in demand and the most valuable are blockchain development, smart contract programming, and data analysts. And I wish to challenge that. I'm going to talk a bit more about what I think are Web3 competencies, which I think are much more important than the skills. The skills can be learned, and also with generative AI, with no coding tools, the idea of the software developer, the smart contract programmer, and the data analyst being king, I think are going to be less so. So because NFTs are such an important part of the creator economy, I want to talk to you a little bit about the rise of that. But before we do that, I realize I've been talking for quite some time, and I just want to check in. Does anyone have a question, or does anyone have anything that they would like me to clarify before I continue chatting? I've come out to have a look in the meeting chat. So if you've got anything, type it into the meeting chat. We would love to hear from you. And I'm going to go back to the presentation and carry on, but don't be shy. I really encourage you to ask a question, because there's no there's no wrong question, right? If you're thinking it, other people are thinking it. This is a technology that's come together with finance and with tech, which are both male-dominated and have their own language, and they've joined together so that the language in this industry is not plain English. So I'm doing my best to be able to make sure that we can understand these concepts. but please do ask around any technical aspects, any clarification or anything that, you know, that you've been aware of before you came in and you wanted to ask. Can't guarantee I'll know all the answers, but I can do my best.
Thanks, Bridget.
So the rise of NFTs, 2015 is when Ethereum was launched, which gave us the technology, Ethereum, where we could start to build smart contracts. We've seen many other blockchains. Ethereum is a blockchain, Bitcoin is a blockchain. We call them protocols and we call them layer ones. We've seen a number of these grow since the early days of 2015. There's a number of reasons for that. The longer the technology has been out, the more that we can see what the problems are, the more that people can rebuild and start again, knowing those problems and having the solutions for them. They also look to focus on solving different problems. So Ethereum is very much the most active when it comes to smart contracts, but there's a lot of issues. It's changed when it comes to the amount of power that is consumed and also what we call the transaction fees. They have made a switch to be able to address some of that, but these are still issues that Ethereum inherently has. Technology is moving forward to be able to correct those issues, both on the Ethereum network and with other protocols. So different protocols are looking to address solutions in different ways. 2017, we saw CryptoKitties come around. They were the first major NFT game that was released, and I was working in the industry at this point, and NFTs weren't what they are today. So it was interesting that they kind of came in under the radar, well, for me at least, and a few others, but not too much under the radar, because we had our first NFT marketplace that was launched called OpenSea, and it still continues to be one of the most actively traded marketplaces that we have. 2018, the NBA out in America, a basketball franchise, launched its own NFT platform, and this is when we looked at being able to have videos of footage that was being played. They had the designs of championship rings that they put as pictures, as NFTs, that they were able to sell to people. And we saw more marketplaces launch. In 2020 is also when I saw a lot more people, and particularly women, come into the Web3 sector. Why? It's when you've got tech and finance together, not everyone is interested in this and they can't see it how it relates to them, this technically how it relates to them. But you start entering into art communities and more of the creator economy, then of course we're opening up the wider network to a different market sector. I've been very pleased to see that, and it's making sure that we as an industry work to keep those women and the younger audiences engaged and able to continue in this industry. What we did see though was with this rise of the hype is that the utility of the NFT in terms of what could it do was very much static. It was very much, we designed some art, we're selling you the art. The idea behind the art is that the art will go up in value, as we saw crazy prices do. We've almost seen more than a 90% drop in those high peak prices. So it's really important, if we're going to use NFTs to have long-term value, that they're more than just speculative in their nature. And we're seeing the technicality of those utilities also improving. So the first NFTs were what we call static. We now have the possibility of what we call dynamic NFTs, which means that you can change and add value to the NFT when you first create it. So you're able to continue to give value to your community members, for example, who have come into the membership through an NFT purchase and opportunity. Does anyone have any questions around that? Okay, I'm going to carry on, but do let me know if anything comes up on the chat. So, thank you. So in terms of communities in Web3, there are many, vast, broad, and they touch across all subject matters, all interests across the globe entirely. I just want to talk about three main types of communities to give you an understanding. So we have what we call DAO communities. So remember I said before is that you have an opportunity to vote in the organization and decide what the future might look like and shape it. You can even get your hands dirty, which we very much encourage, and start to participate to help build the future of what it is that your community has come together for. So a DAO stands for decentralized autonomous organization, which, like I said, like NFT, if someone said to you, oh, a decentralized autonomous organization, when I hear these words, they still don't mean anything to me. But so a DAO is a place where people can get together, they can earn tokens from the work that they do to help the community get towards its goal. They can vote using the tokens to be able to show that they have skin in the game and shape on that. We also have NFT communities. The World of Women community was a very successful launch. It was able to raise millions on their first NFT series that they did, and they've gone on to do more. What they've chosen to do is to say we've reinvested the money that we've got from our launch of the NFTs, from those sales, and we're reinvesting into women in the creator economy so they can have the backing, they can have access to being given the tools to do more of their content creation. And then they also have the World of Women community, which they can be exposed to find fans of theirs, to find buyers of their art. So I really like this as an idea of how we can use the creator economy, collaboration, and this technology to be able to advance people. The DeFi technology, DeFi is a whole subject in its own right, but just understanding that if you've previously been excluded from ramping onto economic activities, DeFi is designed to be able to remove those barriers. We've seen a lot of bad acting in this space. We see a lot of greed in this space. We're seeing struggles with regulations, which we'll touch on later on. But again, the promise of the technology and what it can do is very exciting. And the more that we have women and younger people coming in and getting involved and having diverse opinions of what a good solution looks like and being able to bring it out there, the more we'll be able to mature and see those projects diminish. So I want to touch on now just a few, we've got 20 minutes left, and I know that I want to share with you a few of the projects that are out there live in the world and talk to you a little bit about them and how they impact on the creator economy, how they impact on, when we looked at the future of work, the importance of the ESG goals. I think also personally how they can help across global developing geographies and communities. And I'll take you through them from fashion to music to gaming, design, art, and talk about cross collaboration. I'm also reminded as I get to this point, the majority of these have either women-led or they have women in C-suite positions. And that's important for me because of what I've shared with you. But also I saw a meme yesterday that said, if you teach a man, if you educate a man, you educate a person. If you educate a woman, you educate a community, and that includes youth and families. So these are 100% tied to the success of youth coming into the content, the creator economy. So when it comes to fashion, horrified to discover that across the fashion standard, whenever they produce a line of clothing, they automatically overproduce by 40%. So 40% goes into landfills. If you Google landfill of clothing or fast fashion, you'll see swathes of communities just under mountains of dumped clothing. The environmental cost for the amount of water that it takes to create a t-shirt or a pair of jeans, it's a huge footprint. And then we have all of the carbon footprint of where the fashion, where the supply chains are traveling to. So Digital Twin is a startup among many that is looking to find solutions for the current fast fashion problems that we have. It's very expensive if you want to have your own fashion brand. And so what they're doing is they're saying, and this is perfect for the content creator economy, the creator economy, is they're opening up new income streams. So they go to influencers who have already done the hard work and who have managed to build on platforms like Instagram and TikTok, for example. And you have raving fans who are very interested in what they do, whether they're musicians or whatever types of content creators they might be. And they're offering them the ability to now launch their own fashion label. They have two ways that they can have the fashion label. One is as a digital asset that they can first sell. So they can supply a digital asset to their fans. That's fantastic. But two, and more importantly for me when it comes to this, is they're able to then say, would you like this garment in real life to wear, out in the real world? And so that they can then, as their fans, say, yes, I do very much want to do that. And they can purchase this through the NFT and the smart contract. Then what the organization does is they create the clothing bespoke. So they only create what is ordered. None of this 40% wastage that's done. It's done by 3D printing, which means that we're reducing waste. And those 3D printers will be situated geographically, locally to the various markets. So we're not seeing a large supply chain carbon footprint from somebody ordering in Southern Hemisphere and it's being produced in the Northern Hemisphere. And I know that with her program, what she's looking to do is go out into various economies to assist more youth and women to share in this business model. So we can have locally produced, locally sourced revenues. In the music industry, I guess it depends how old you are, and most of you aren't as old as me anymore, unfortunately. But remember the stories, and if you're from a Western music taste as well, Prince and George Michael, they had very public, very long, drawn-out stories of their record labels, so they didn't feel as though they had any ownership on the content that they created. They didn't have any ownership on the revenue that they were creating. And we've also seen the rise of social media, where our fans, the fans of artists, want to be far more connected with them through social media platforms, at gigs. Taylor Swift has been a very good example of being able to use her audience and social media to make that a much more intimate journey. But we haven't until now been able to allow the artists to create their music, put it onto an NFT, be able to reach out to their fans directly, be able to engage with them, offer them tickets, and have much more control over the content they create, and more importantly, over the income that they're generating from that. So we're seeing lots of ways that this is happening. And also, Kira, please come in and share with some of the artists that you know that we discussed before, out of different regions and different geographies, because I know that would be fascinating for our audience. In terms of gaming, the gaming community is huge. I have to admit, it's something that I haven't been involved in, but I know my son enjoys it very much. And when it comes to Web3 and gaming, a lot of people will spend money on the digital items that they need for their weapons and their army that they collect as they go through the game's journey. Previous to Web3, you never owned them. And if the game wanted to change it, close it down, or anything like that, you'd spent your money, but you didn't own these assets at all. Now we have the opportunity to do that. And there's a new game that's called Degen. And I wanted to share with you about it, because what's different about this game is if you do go into gaming, if you have a look, things like Fortnite, etc., you'll see that they're all very violent. And when there's a lot of youth, and just not everyone wants to have violence, the C-suite team were all male, apart from one woman. She's Algerian, and she turned around and said, I'm more than happy for us to have a game. I'm more than happy for us to have some sort of battle and some fights, but can we please remove the violence from it? And the creative team said to her, well, what do you imagine? She said, you're the creative team, come back to me. And then very ingeniously and very simply, they changed the weapons to be bananas. So now you have a game that's fun to play, that is more appropriate to all ages, and that differentiates itself from all the other games that are out there, and as a result has become very successful. We also see the same things that are happening for independent designers, whether that be in terms of furniture that's being designed, interior designs. We have, this is led by a fantastic woman called Zara Samani. She has been in tech for a number of years. She's been working in Web3, actually leading in Web3 from 2014. And her Persian background has really led her to be strongly believing in the idea behind Web3, that it can be borderless, that can be permissionless, that people should be able to engage in it. And it's wonderful to see her going from strength to strength with her startup now. We also have Amariza, who is an example for art, So we touched on the creation of digital art, how previously artists had been excluded from the secondary markets of earning from their creations. But now we can independently authenticate that they are the creator when they created it. They can be much more immersive by using various technologies. I'm very briefly touching on the fact that Web3 allows us to go into the metaverse, or it allows us to have augmented reality or extended reality. It's a way for those assets to be able to be interacted with and to transact in. Amrita is a pioneer in being able to use this immersive technologies and to be able to earn from them. And none of these sit in silo. All of these opportunities can be best served by having cross collaborations. And you can do one-off cross collaborations where you create new digital assets that can continue to be out there that you earn revenues from. You can have longer term partnerships. It's a really exciting way to be able to create value, and then that value to continue to be received by the originators and the content creators for the life of the NFT. So it can go not only for their annuity income, which women and youth do not have access to. So this is fantastic to be able to have, pardon me, all of these assets bringing in value for a long term. And they might be small amounts, but as you build those number of assets that you have, you'll be able to create a much better financial economic environment for yourself and for your family. And I just want to touch quickly, because I'm sure all of you will be aware that that's fine, Web3 sounds great, but what about the carbon footprint that it does have? Bitcoin uses an awful lot of electricity to be able to do its transactions, and it does so for security reasons. But not all Web3 is about using power. There are many Web3 organizations, coalitions, communities that are looking at addressing getting to carbon zero, to saving the rainforest, and who are working together to be able to do that. So I just wanted to give a balance in terms of what people may have heard in terms of the carbon footprint of blockchain technology. So I think I painted a rather rosy picture. The reality is we're not there like that at all. The reality is, and which I did touch on, we've seen a lot of the technology is transparent, but for sure, a lot of the organizations who are using this technology have not been transparent in their practices. You'll have heard about FTX. FTX leveraged digital assets. It didn't use the technology. It saw a loophole and have definitely had, well, the courts will decide, but criminal negligence. So we need to make sure that we don't get sidetracked by the bad actors who just see a new marketplace that isn't well regulated, that they can come in and that they can act illegally in, to actually what the promise is and what technology can do and how it can be used. But the other part of the promise versus the reality is this democratization isn't happening right now. We're so far removed from that. Women are not included nearly as much. Once women are included, we'll see more education for everyone. We'll see better utility. We'll see more sustainable business models. We'll see more exciting real-world problems being addressed. And I'm really excited to see and invite more women into the space. Naturally, as women come in, all of the research shows how that helps the next generation of youth as well. So remember I said the top 3 skills were blockchain, developer smart, contract, and data analysts. Well, as we do have generative AI, with the launch of things like ChatGPT, with the ability for them to be able to do a lot of the coding, a lot of the smart contract auditing, and a lot of the data analysts, I actually think the core competences for our younger generation, and ones that I believe that many women hold, are much more important. You have to be motivated. This is true in the creator economy, because you're becoming much more entrepreneurship. It's the same in the Web3. You have self-awareness, curiosity, and lifelong learning. Your top skills need to be analytical, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, agility, understanding what your strengths are and what tools that you can use to be able to become more productive, understand the communities you can go to learn where to network, and to have the right attitude for success. As I said, it's much more collaborative in nature, so being able to work well with others, being able to lead others, especially we're still really young in this Web3 journey, and the women that I see in the space leading the way, I find an absolute privilege to be with and work with. So core competencies are things that we should be more focused on rather than the hard skills when we're looking at the longer term, especially when we're seeing generative AI come in to replace a lot of the skills that we had. So what do you need to access this? Okay, so I've seen a lot of things, and some of the things, all of the real world the real world applications I gave you come from women and women who are from across the globe. What do you need to be able to come into Web3? What does someone need to be able to use the creator economy and leverage on Web3 to be able to have more access to an audience, to ownership of content, and therefore to revenue share? And it's access to educational skills. We need this for our youth, and we need this for our women, who are the two people who have been most marginalized by COVID. It's all very fine if you've got a decent internet and you've got a smart device. So most people I know come into Web3, blockchain, crypto, whatever you want to call it, through a community or a friendship or a network. They're invited in. Yes, we're seeing more press, but it's still difficult to understand in this burgeoning huge ecosystem with language that doesn't make sense, DAOs and NFTs, to know where to start, to understand what it can do for you, and then to understand what those next steps are. So I definitely encourage that we should be supporting those educational opportunities and making sure that the digital divide doesn't cut off the most vulnerable people from being able to access the resources that they need to become as independently proficient and have some chance of some financial inclusivity. As I say, everything that I do is always focused through a gendered lens. The issue that women have most globally, as I said, invisible work, the need for flexibility. I look at women in cross and developing countries and their craft skills, their ability to create beautiful things. I really think that we can start to leverage that to give them access to converting some of that onto digital creations, allowing those digital creations to go into part of the design for physical goods, and to be able to have access to markets where it's not just about physically saying what you produce, but having wider access and a wider audience globally to what you're doing. It's important that we make sure that our youth and women are included, because we're seeing greater divides of security, of safety, with the rise of the cost of living, with the rise of economic inflation, and with those who are less educated and women being squeezed out of the labour market. Permanent models of social protection need to come into play. But those are down to local regions and areas. Wouldn't it be better if we can lift everyone up and be the benefits of the creator economy on Web3, making sure that we focus on not allowing this digital divide to extend any further? So all of that sounds great, but the other part of the possibilities versus realities is very much a case of, okay, I now have a wallet online. I now have created content. I've now been able to sell that content. I've now been able to receive value for that content into my digital wallet. How do I then take that digital asset, NFT, crypto, whatever it might be, into my local economy to make sure that I can start to pay my bills or feed my children or pay for education? How can I make this digital asset worthwhile to me? So we have to make sure that we do have the necessary onboarding, on-ramping from the current economic system that we do. Or if you don't have access to, if you're unbanked, you don't have access to finance, once you do manage to create some value in some digital assets, how do you convert that, an off-ramp, into an economy and into a currency that you're able to use? Otherwise, it's largely not serving all of the ideas and the principles that we're looking for. So it's important that we're able to access and have a look at that. I know that different countries have different exchanges that work better, but depending on where you're at, we're definitely finding that off-ramping is getting stuck in jurisdictions where the regulations either ban it completely or they've made it too difficult for exchanges to be able to operate in, and therefore that service isn't available. So there are lots of things that we need to look at. We need to look at how do we get more funding to a more diverse community? How do we make sure that we have a better user experience? How do we make sure that we have access for all? And then how do we have better UX, UI? How do we have better solutions that we're building? And how do we do this whilst making sure that we understand the legal landscape of Web3, that we're working with the regulators, that we're working with policymakers, that we're not allowing the promise of technology not to be got out there because of red tape. Now, different geographies across the world are approaching this differently. So Web3 has been around, it's new, but it's been around long enough that I'm personally disappointed by what we've seen in terms of the regulation in the marketplace. I'm going to talk to you a bit more about the three areas that when it comes to potential legal and regulatory areas we can look at. One is the subject matter of data protection. So when it comes to data protection, if you've got something that is on-chain, that is on the ledger, that is public, that can't be changed, then we have issues and questions as to whether or not that complies with GDPR. We have issues and questions whether that has the right, that also conforms with the right to be forgotten. But there are solutions that are being created for this to give the ability to disguise, cryptographically protect that data. So we can sort of overcome some of those barriers. But at the moment, we've got tech companies that own our data, that sell our data, that we don't own, that we don't get any control over. So I definitely think this is something that whilst existing rules are out there, that we look together to be able to provide a solution for. The same as the IP. Isn't it great that as an artist, I can now put my, mint my new digital asset onto the blockchain, onto the ledger, have a record of that data. The metadata is there. It shows who I am, where I am, what wallets I have, all those things. But that only assumes that I'm actually the creator of that artwork before it goes on to the blockchain. What happens if somebody else created the artwork, but they hadn't put it onto the blockchain to register it? What happens then? These are things that we haven't got the answers to yet, but we need to be considered very much when you're looking at intellectual property. There are other aspects as well. And then the regulations, legal and regulatory requirements vary enormously. So we have this technology, which is fantastic because it's borderless, permissionless, but the regulators are not global. The regulatory issues are very much by jurisdiction. They change dramatically. They're very much in different progresses. And it's difficult for companies who do wish to be able to operate with policymakers and regulators when those regulators haven't even started to think about it. Whilst we see other organizations be the bad actors, which means that then it becomes more challenging for these regulations to be made with the idea that we can trust those who are building in this environment. You can trust many, but you can't trust many as well. So what do we do around those regulations? It's something that every new market has to go through. We find that regulations have always been retroactive rather than proactive, which is what we wanted to avoid in the Web3 environments. 2008, retroactively, man-made crisis meant that new regulations came in. What ideally would have been nice to see was that regulators were built as the technology and innovation moves forward, but that's not the economic, sorry, that's not the beast of regulators. So let's talk about the US versus the EU approaches. The US, and I'm sure if any of you are following around this, will have noticed that actually the US has become very anti-crypto. The regulators are making it very difficult for organizations in the US to understand what their future is. And I'm seeing a lot of conversations of those US organizations leaving territories. And they are going to places like the EU and Dubai because they have much more clarity on what that framework and that regulations look like. So the US regulate cryptocurrencies as securities. They have a number of regulatory bodies that handle crypto assets, over 6+. And depending on what state you're in, those regulations will be more or less favorable, which is difficult when you're serving a market that covers all of those states and beyond. In the EU, they decided to be a much more broad-based approach, so it covers both cryptocurrencies and other virtual assets. It's under the MiCA regulations, which aims to protect both the customer and the misuse of crypto assets and maintaining an environment that is conducive to innovation, which I think is a very laudable and very wise move forward, because whether we like it or not, we will see bad actors popping up in jurisdictions that aren't regulated, still reaching vulnerable people or people across all jurisdictions. So to have companies and organizations that people can rely on, know that they're regulated, understand that if there is anything that goes awry, then those customers actually have some sort of regulatory fallback on, I think is really important in making sure that we produce an environment where everyone can thrive on the promise of Web3 rather than be taken advantage of. So in terms of the regulations and the policies, there's a lot of unknowns. EU seems to have a lot more clarity on what's going on. If you look at Jordan, they haven't started yet. Kuwait hasn't started yet. Whereas Malaysia, Mauritius, Singapore, and Switzerland particularly have all decided, and the United Arab Emirates have all decided to have much more clearer policies of what's happening. So we need to make sure that we're speaking to legal policies and making bodies. We need to make sure that we're talking as much as we can do with the regulators and industry associations. And we need to make sure that we're behaving in a way that doesn't stifle innovation, but also doesn't allow for the innovation to allow people to be taken advantage of. So I have shared what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much for listening. I would love and welcome, any questions and any feedback. Thank you very much.
Yes, they're coming in.
Thank you so much, Bridget. We have the first question from Angelika. And Angelika has multiple questions. Maybe you want to link in.
Do you want to ask them yourself, Angelika?
I just can question this myself because they're very rudimental and basic questions. Bridget, first of all, thank you so much for this really insightful presentation. Very comprehensive, very complex. I think it needs a lot to digest and deep dive in, especially also in the regulatory frameworks, etc., because this is, I think, a global dimension and also a global challenge we will have. This was my last question on the regulatory, but I think you explained it very well. I was posting it before you presented the legal frameworks and, also gaps we still have to fill in. My fundamental question is a very simple one. It's on the market. I know that was not your goal today to present market data, but you presented very interesting examples, and I can imagine, especially also from looking logically into the future of work and the future of this emerging market, that there will be a huge demand and a huge growth. So, are there already market estimations on how the market share now is and how it will be in the future? Is there something like this available or discussions?
It wasn't something that I found. I did want to see what the predictions were. It was more of a case of this is what it currently is. I think yes. So there are two points when one looks at predicted markets. Okay, if you're in the bull market, the crypto winter, the point where there's not as much money running around right now as we're in, then I see as long as we're building sensible, thoughtful, useful projects, then we're going to see, the more mature we get, the more we can have an idea of actually what the future market looks like. Because the problem that we've got is that when we have the crypto summer or the crypto spring, the prices go so far beyond what they're actually valued at because of the hype. I think, you know, we can look back and we say, well, 2 years ago the market was worth this, but we knew that it was overpriced, and now I think that it's underpriced. So how much Web3 has to do with the creator economy, I'm not sure, but I can certainly have Kira and I can have another look to see if we can find sources and resources for stats.
I have the Fuel Art and Tech NFT Startup report from 2022 at least.
Yes.
And we have numbers there from 2022. So there are reports on the market cap, on the investment. So how much investment went into Web3 companies, which were about gaming, which were about videography, and we have numbers. Yes.
You want to share some, Kira? Can you share some?
Yes,
right now?
of course. So the digital art market segment of online marketplaces received investments in 2021 that amounted to 754 million for 33 companies. So we have companies that received funding in gaming. We have startups that received 120 million in content production. In asset management, we have 87 million, which went to amount of 9 companies. So the investment right now seems like that they're really focusing on a singularity of companies, but what we don't have included in the report is how many people from which countries work there. Yes.
Oh,
It's a whole report.
Yes, I think
Pratik
shared at 1456 that they did an estimate of the contribution of the creator economy in India and employment and GDP, and he shared they've shared the link there to the study. So I think we can maybe pull some information out of there as well, at least to understand that region.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you allow me, my second question, but maybe it is also hard to answer. The question is also in the future, if the market is not regulated now, and it seems to be an emerging market, and it seems also to be, well, there could be all difficulties there. Is there the potential that giants will grab the market and organize the market for themselves, so that we don't have exactly this idea of everyone can share and be included?
Yeah, so when Facebook was talking about being, you know, a metaverse, I was like, well, that's not the metaverse. The metaverse needs to be that those who are interacting and contributing to it own their own data, have access to a shared economy. If centralized organizations are able to provide those decentralized experiences in a true manner, then I'd be surprised because it's such a different shift in their thinking and in their business models. So it's a question of making sure that people understand what decentralized web means and why it's important to them, why it's important that you have access to your data, especially the more that we go online, especially the more that, you know, you rely on a handful of organizations for your data, your privacy, your connections, and your finances. We are not seeing as much democratization of building as the promise of this, and we need to address the VCs as well and where that funding is going, because as Kira pointed out, I think there was a handful of people who were getting an awful lot of money rather than distribution of money across many interesting and more distributed solutions. So it's something that we need to be able to course correct.
So it's part of this community movement, basically, you know, to really fight for these rights or integrate these rights. Yeah. Interesting. Any more question, Angelika, from your side? Or
That's fine with me. Thank you. I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to hitchhike now the whole session.
I'm
Okay.
happy to stay on. You can ask them later, or we can set up
But I
another
think
call.
there are some more questions.
yeah, I mean, I see from Boniface. I don't know exactly if I pronounce that correctly, but you say also, what would be the lifespan of Web3? Do you have any estimation for that? I think that fits for our discussion. Is that surviving? No, this idea of community development, or what is the Web lifespan?
I think we're at the beginning. Well, my hope is that we're at the beginning of a course correction of what the internet was meant to be when we first started. It was democratized, but the people who are building on it, the people who are sharing, we didn't have blockchain technology to be able to give them the financial rewards for what they were building. So instead, we ended up with companies like Google and Facebook having to make up what they thought would be a good economic model, which ended up driving us to the position of where we are now, where it's gated communities. They know way more about us than we do. There's not that same inclusivity and sharing economy. So I really think the future of everything that we do should be built on a decentralized system. I think it's more important when you think about, we're seeing the disparity. So the World Economic Forum has said the companies are going to say that they're going to invest in women and youth, but how long have I heard that for? In my 20s, I thought we had more gender equality. Today, the stats are going backwards. So saying that you'll invest in something and then also making sure that that investment converts into next pandemic we have, that youth and women aren't the most who are in that economic divide. I don't think our current systems are doing a good enough job. So we need to have this opportunity to allow technology to allow us to connect and learn and share from a decentralized point of view.
Mm. But Boniface, perhaps you want to join in as well. I mean, we are not such a big round, so you can also open your micro and just give your opinion, because it seems like you have long-term experience as well. And also Eduardo as next could join in. You don't have to read your chats, I think. So
Don't have to be shy.
Switch on exactly the micro. You're welcome. Speak out loudly. Boniface, I don't know if you want to, but...
So Eduardo is asking a great question when it comes to gas fees.
Okay, let's do Eduardo then. Sorry, Boniface.
Sorry, if someone's coming in, that's great, but I was just reading Eduardo's. NFTs are linked with, yes. So on one of the things that I didn't discuss on this, because there's only obviously so much we can cover, we have consensus mechanisms. So the technology that allows a distributed blockchain means that we have to have consensus mechanisms that says, is this transaction correct? Does it need to be recorded onto the ledger? And let's make sure that the transaction happens. So those people, or those nodes at least, those networks that are responsible for doing that, need to be rewarded for that. So we have fees for those transactions, which is where Eduardo is talking about. When we look at Ethereum, the gas fees, so those fees are called gas fees. Those transaction fees are called gas fees. And when the network is congested, when there's a lot of competition for people to say, here's my transaction, please approve it, please make sure that we put it onto the ledger, please make it happen, then the gas fees go up. And they can be huge. Not even just in Africa would you talk about the inequality. So there are a number of technological advances that are being built to make sure that actually some blockchains don't have any fees at all. So we can make sure that inequality, because there's no point having something that you're selling for 30 cents if the transaction fee is $10. I mean, it just doesn't make sense at all, and that can sometimes happen. So we're new in making sure that we can overcome the solutions. But I do believe that these are very valid questions that are being addressed because they are so important. Are there any ethical issues around Web3, and can they be actively resolved through regulation? Loads of issues around the actors in Web3 as opposed to the promise. And yes, we do need to be able to work with regulators to be able to make sure that we can get rid of those bad actors, have best practices, and make sure that everyone feels more safe in participating. I'm sorry to hear that you're unwell, Eduardo, but thank you for participating.
Right, yeah. But Boniface, I think I heard you trying to open your mic. Do you want to join in? Is it possible for you? You hear the sound of the microphone.
Yes.
don't think I can hear the voice. So unfortunately, it's not working. Condemned to listening. Okay, so use the chat if it's not working, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do all day, every day, Eduardo, is the points around representation. But the tech can be what the tech is. It's still built by humans, funded by humans. And so those biases, unfortunately, come over into the new worlds, into the new tech. And it's a question of making sure that we can combine forces together to not allow it to get to the point where we've seen it before. Africa is really interesting because I'm seeing and hearing a lot about it. I think I mentioned that in the presentation, that it has the opportunity to be able to leapfrog Western worlds. One of the reasons it's able to do that is, you know, if you look at the US, for example, they've got existing legacy systems. They've got issues where it comes to regulations, and so their innovations and therefore the investments are now aren't flowing to them in the same way. People still want to be able to build this, and the opportunities, because of, you know, having better infrastructure across the African continent, that allow and who have more, you know, people who are educated and the barrier to entry is lower. That there's so many opportunities that I can't wait to see, and there's more VC funding activities that I'm seeing coming, being put into African nations as well. So I'm very excited to see that future.
And if I can link in that topic, I feel like in countries where the institutions are not that integrated as they are in Western Europe, that people are way more open to experiment with this new technology as well, with the currency as well. And when it comes to the creative industry and the global market, I feel like it's the first time with the NFT marketplaces that so many creators from literally all over the world come together on one platform. So I feel like even from how the marketplaces are built and who is participating in there, it seems like a way more inclusive structure than what we have seen before when it comes to offering creative potential and content from creatives.
Yeah, I think the more where the current systems aren't working, the more there is less legacy systems to circumnavigate, the more opportunities, and that's what we're seeing in different countries as well. You know, anyone who's got hyperinflation, the question isn't why, the question is how.
You can also see that in Lebanon, where we have one of the highest adoptions currently.
All right. I think no questions in the chat, at least.
Is there anything that anyone wants to share as well? It doesn't have to be a question. We'd love to know your insight, and thank you for the insights that you have already shared regarding the research in India and Mr. Boniface. So anything else that someone wants to ask or share would be great. Otherwise, I thank you very much for your patience and your attention.
And I would love to hear from you, Bridget. What is your your further power into the sector? What are you on, basically?
So yeah, thank you very much for asking. So we need a lot of the Web3 industry is largely startups. It's largely fragmented, and at the moment it's running with small budgets, which means that when you are looking at creating in your startup, you go to your natural network, right? Which means we're not building these startups with diversity of thought, experience, inclusion in mind, because people don't have the budgets to be able to hire people to go out and find them. They don't have an HR department to be able to show them the way to do that. So whilst, you know, we're seeing this crypto winter, I think it's incredibly important that we put a solution in place and have a playbook. So we're building a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging playbook that is backed by academia, built in conjunction with the industry, to say this is the best way to go about making sure that you are diverse and inclusive in finding your co-founders, in hiring people when you're at acceleration stage, in making sure that they're at the C-suite, in onboarding people as they come in retaining them, in nurturing them, in funding them, so that it doesn't matter where you are in the organization. And as you know, you're an industry giant that's coming in, you want to partner up with the Web3 startup to help you navigate how to come into this. If all of those startups have largely been men who have received the investment, how do we widen up that opportunity to find those startups that have a more diverse founder and have that opportunity into that supply chain? So we want to be able to build a blueprint that shows everyone, no matter where they are, what to do, how to do it, where to go, and then turn that into a SaaS model so you can just integrate it into your systems. That's what we're working on. So when we have the next bull run, we can see far more of this inclusion, this opportunity for others, and to create better products and be more sustainable come into fruition.
That's your passion. Great to hear.
Absolutely.
So Kira, you're summing up, and then I think we end, and I will also post the next 2 webinar series in the chat, so you can see the next 2 topics coming up soon.
Yes.
May 25th, and that's where we really want to talk more about community, but I hand over to Kira to sum up and perhaps make an outlook on what's coming up next.
I'd like to say one quick thing before Kira does that. Angelica, you said that you had many more questions. Anyone else who's listening to this live or at the recording, please, if you want to, reach out to me so I can help you get some answers to those questions.
Thanks a lot, Bridget. That's very kind of you. So, Kira.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Thanks a lot to the audience for these great questions, for this great discussion. We will continue next Wednesday with community.
Next Thursday, I'm correct. Is it Thursday or Wednesday? Am I confused now? Next Wednesday, 25th. Help me. Is it a Thursday or Wednesday?
The 21st.
It's Thursday.
25th. It's a Thursday, right? So just to correct, the 25th is a Thursday. That's where we're going to meet again. So Kira, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't want to correct you, just to make it clear.
No, I mean, it's better that we have the correct date. Thank you so much. Exactly. We will continue on the 25th, next Thursday, with a webinar where we will have a deep dive into communities. So we will talk to artists about the industry sector, and the week afterwards, on the 1st of June, we will have a special series about women in Web3, where we will also hear stories from artists, from other women from the industry. And yes, I think that was a beautiful kickoff to our webinar series. I'm very thankful, and I have nothing more to say. Maybe Angelica wants to have a last word.
Thank you so much. It was not planned to have a last word, but I will do this. Thank you. No, I think I already really was very thankful that we had the time to discuss the Web3 topics. The more I deep dive in, the more questions I have. But I think this is good because it's an emerging market. And for me, it is really clear to bring this knowledge together, to have more insights into the positive sides, but also the challenges and the negative sides. And exactly what you said, Bridget, it is important to look into the future and to see what the ecosystem and what the regulation and what other framework conditions we need to build up a sustainable structure, so that not only the giants but also everyone who is creative has the chance to participate and to profit from this new emerging market. However, I think the other two webinars are also very interesting to have an insight and to see what you already said, Kira, the communities, what already has been built up, and the same also looking to women. I would like to also know what are maybe the constraints, because Bridget, you said there are women communities, but unfortunately, it is somehow not so emergent as we want to see it. And I think these discussions I would also like to cover with the audience and with everyone who is interested, and to see what we in our communities can bring in to push it forward. It's a knowledge platform. It's an exchange. We don't want to give advices to someone, whatever, but I think it is good to bring all these competences together and discuss our experiences. And so great experiences, Bridget, wonderful insights. Again, a lot of or big thanks to you and to all the contributors, and also to Heike and Kira, who framed our workshops today and the series.
Thank you very much. Goodbye to everybody, and see you again, and spread the word. We will definitely make these drums running for next time policy meets community. So bye-bye. Thanks, Bridget.